there does, and I think you write this in the book, there seems to be a gravity pulling people towards the primitive mind.
Well, when it comes to anything political, right? Religious, certain things are bottom heavy, for our psyche. They have a magnet that pulls our psyches downwards on the ladder. And why? Why does politics pull our psyches down on the ladder? Because for the tens of thousand years that we were evolving, during human history, it was life or death. Politics was life or death, and so there's actually an amazing study where it's like they challenged like 20 different beliefs of a person, and different parts of the person's brain, and they had an MRI going. Different parts of the person's brain lit up when non-political beliefs were challenged versus political beliefs were challenged. When political beliefs were challenged, when non-political beliefs were challenged, the rational, like the prefrontal cortex type areas were lit up. When the political beliefs were challenged, and then I'm getting over my head here, but it's like the parts of your brain, the default mode network, the parts of your brain associated with like introspection and like your own identity were lit up. And they were much more likely to change their mind on all the beliefs, the non-political beliefs. When that default mode network part of your brain lit up, you were gonna, if anything, get more firm in those beliefs when you had them challenged. So politics is one of those topics that just it literally lights up different part of our brain. And again, I think we come back to primitive mind, higher mind here. It's like it gets our higher. This is one of the things our primitive mind comes programmed to care a ton about, and so it's going to be very hard for us to stay rational and calm and looking for truth because we have all this gravity towards.
Well, it's weird because politics, like, what is politics? Like, you talk about, it's a bunch of different issues, and on each individual issue, if we really talk about it,
tax policy, like, why are we being emotional about this?
I don't think we're actually that. I mean, we're emotional about something else.
Yeah, I think what we're emotional about is this. My side, the side I've identified with, is in power and making the decisions, and your side is out of power. And if your side's in power, that's really scary for me, because that goes back to, the idea of who's pulling the strings in this tribe, right? Who's the chief? Is it your family's patriarch or is it mine? We might not have food if we don't win this, kind of whatever, chief election. So I think that it's not about the tax policy or anything like that. And then it gets tied to this like broader, I think a lot of our tribalism has really coalesced around this. We don't have that much religious tribalism in the US, right? It's not, the Protestants and the Catholics hate each other. We don't have that really, right? And honestly, you say, people like to, say we have racial tribalism and everything, but a white, even a kind of a racist white conservative guy, I think takes the black conservative over the woke white person any day of the week right now.
So that's the strongest.
It tells me that I think
of
politics
division
is way stronger tribalism right now. I think that white racist guy, loves the black conservative guy compared to the white woke guy, right? There's no to me, I think not that racial tribalism isn't a thing. Of course, it's always a thing, but like political tribalism is the number one right now.
So race is almost a topic for the political division versus the actual sort of element of the tribe.
It's a political football. It's
So there's I mean, this is dark because this is a book about human civilization. This is a book about human nature, but it's also a book of politics. About politics. It is just the way you list it out in the book. It's kind of dark how we just fall into these left and right checklists. So if you're on the left, it's maintain Roe v. Wade, universal healthcare good, mainstream media fine, guns kill people, U.S. is a racist country, protect immigrants, tax cuts bad, climate change awful, raise minimum wage. And on the right is the flip of that. Reverse Roe v. Wade, universal healthcare bad, mainstream media bad, people kill people, not guns kill people. U.S. was a racist country. Protect borders. Tax cuts good. Climate change overblown. Don't raise minimum wage. I mean, it has. You almost don't have to think about any of this.
Well,
it's like literally.
So when you say it's a book about politics, it's interesting because it's a book about the vertical axis.
Right.
It's specifically not a book about the horizontal axis, and that I don't actually talk about any of these issues. I don't put out an opinion on them. Those are all horizontal, right? but when you and rather than argue, having another book about those issues about right versus left, I wanted to do a book about this other axis. And so on this axis, the reason I had this checklist is that this is a part of the low rung politics world, right? Low rung politics is a checklist. And that checklist evolves, right? Like Russia suddenly is like popular with the right, as opposed to, it used to be, in the 60s, the left was the one defending Stalin. Like, so they'll switch. It doesn't even matter. The substance doesn't matter. It's that this is the approved checklist of the capital P party, and this is what everyone believes. That's a low rung thing. The high rungs, this is not what it's like. High rung politics, you tell me your one view on this, I have no idea what you think about anything else, right? And you're going to say, I don't know about a lot of stuff, because inherently you're not going to have that strong an opinion because you don't have that much info. These are complex things. So there's a lot of I don't know, and people are all over the place. It's you're talking to someone who has been subsumed with low rung politics when, if they tell you their opinion on any one of these issues, you could just rattle off their opinion on every single other one. And if in 3 years it becomes fashionable to have this new view, they're going to have it. You're not thinking. That's echo chamber culture.
And I've been using kind of a shorthand of centrist to describe this kind of a high rung thinking. But people tend to, it seems to be difficult to be a centrist or whatever, a high rung thinker. It's like people want to label you as a person who's too cowardly to take a stance.
Yeah.
Somehow, as opposed to saying I don't know as a first statement.
Well, the problem with centrist is that would mean that in each of these, tax cuts bad, tax cuts good. It means that you are saying I think we should have some tax cuts, but not that many. You might not think that. You might actually do some research and say, actually, I think tax cuts are really important. That doesn't mean, I'm not a centrist anymore. I guess I'm a far, no. That's why we need the second axis. So what you're trying to be when you say centrist is high rung, which means you might be all over the place horizontally. You might agree with the far left on this thing, the far right on this thing. You might agree with the centrists on this thing. Yeah. But calling yourself a centrist actually is putting yourself in a prison on the horizontal axis. And it's saying that, I whatever on the different topics, I'm right in between the two policy-wise. That's not what you are. So yeah, that's what we're badly missing this other axis.
Yeah, I still do think it's like, for me, I am a centrist when you project it down to the horizontal. But the point is, you're missing so much data by not considering the vertical.
Right.
Because, like, on average, maybe it falls somewhere in the middle. But in reality, there's just a lot of nuance, issue to issue, that involves just thinking and uncertainty and changing given the context of the current geopolitics and economics, and just always considering, always questioning, always evolving your views, all of that.
Not just about like, I think we should be in the center on this, but another way to be in the center is if there's some phenomenon happening, there's a terrorist attack, and one side wants to say this has nothing to do with Islam, and the other side wants to say this is radical Islam, right? What's in between those is saying this is complicated and nuanced, and we have to learn more, and it probably has something to do with Islam and something to do with the economic circumstances and something to do with geopolitics. So in a case like that, you actually do get really unnuanced when you go to the extremes, and all of that nuance, which is where all the truth usually is going to be in the middle. So yeah,
but there is a truth to the fact that if you take that nuance on those issues, like war in Ukraine, COVID, you're going to be attacked by both sides.
Yes. People who are really strongly on one side or the other hate centrist people. I've gotten this myself, and the slur that I've had thrown at me is I'm an enlightened centrist in a very mocking way. So what are they actually saying? What does enlightened centrist mean? It means someone who is, Steven Pinker or Jonathan Haidt gets accused of, is that they're highfalutin, intellectual world, and they don't actually have any. They don't actually take a side. They don't actually get their hands dirty, and they can be superior to both sides without actually taking a stand, right? So I see the argument, and I disagree with it, because I firmly believe that the hardcore tribes, they think they're taking a stand and they're out in the streets and they're pushing for something. I think what they're doing is they're just driving the whole country downwards, and I think they're hurting all the causes they care about. And so it's not that we need everyone to be sitting there, refusing to take a side. It's that you can be far left and far right, but be upper left and upper right.